Hello and welcome. My name is Evgeny Rusakov and you're watching TVP World, interview from Vilnius. On Sunday evening, for the third day in a row, balloons that carried contraband flew from Belarus to Lithuania, forcing Vilnius Airport to close for the fourth time. Lithuanian Prime Minister Inga Ruginienė said that a clear algorithm for future actions had been prepared. Lithuania is ready to close its border with Belarus for an indefinite period and to shoot down any balloons that fly in. To discuss Lithuania's current security situation, we are joined today by Lithuanian MP Viktorija Čmilytė-Nielsen. Viktorija, thank you for joining us today. That's a very important topic we're discussing with you today.
Hello and pleasure to be here, but it's true, the situation is serious. President's advisor for security, Davidas Matulionis, said that this is a crisis, and it is indeed a crisis. Lithuania has been a subject of hybrid attacks before, in 2021, famously with the instrumentalization of migration. And I would qualify today what we are experiencing, what our airports are experiencing with these smuggler balloons as another type, a new type of hybrid attack that unfortunately disrupts civilian daily life. In this case, the work of airport, not just Vilnius Airport, but other airports as well. That's why it has to be dealt with utmost seriousness.
Here's the question then. Are you happy with how Lithuanian government is dealing with this situation in general at this specific time?
Well, while I represent opposition and I have quite some remarks about how government is dealing with it, and I think the reaction could have been quicker and more effective, it is clear that it is not an easy task. There is no doubt about it. Today we heard for the first time a more exact algorithm about how the government and all the institutions, agencies together will counter this new type of threat. It's important to point out that Lithuania has faced those smuggler air balloons before, but never with this kind of intensity and never that many days in a row, and never in such a disruptive manner. So we have heard Madam Ruginienė speak of an algorithm, and I would say that among many things that have been mentioned, I would single out, of course, the work with our allies and strategic partners and neighbors, I mean friendly neighbors.
Exactly.
So I think as we have seen from the 2021 Lukashenko regime attack, when we cooperate with Poland, with Latvia, with our neighbors and allies, we work in the most effective way. What is important right now is for the EU and, in fact, for NATO to realize that hybrid attacks are ongoing, that are taking place. Why am I mentioning EU? Because, we know that Lukashenko regime, who we can assume is somehow employing or taking advantage of smugglers, that Lukashenko regime is very sensitive to sanctions. Lukashenko has been working hard to have a chance of relieving the sanctions. We know that the representative of the US administration has visited Minsk in connection with the release of political prisoners.
That's right.
So there have been some movement there. On the other hand, these very unfriendly, very disruptive measures, clearly hostile measures, new moves, are, an attack on the EU and a NATO member. And the fact that it also takes place in the week when the new government has, so to speak, sacked the Minister of Defense also comes as an additional, I would say,
it's not just coincidence.
Yes, exactly. It is a moment when hostile moves against Lithuania are unfortunately particularly effective due to some internal political turbulence that hopefully will be stabilized. But of course, like everything in politics, it takes time.
Exactly.
And right now, well, the government and the institutions are first of all facing this. As I mentioned before, it's very important to have close cooperation with our closest allies and to send these news over the diplomatic channels that Lithuania is experiencing something that has all the all the signs of a hybrid attack from Lukashenko regime. So any kind of warming of or maybe lifting of sanctions towards Lukashenko regime should be taken out of the equation. Exactly, and well, of course, hopefully we can find effective measures against this type of a threat, which seems rather benign, but in fact is extremely disruptive for civilian aviation and even puts travelers at risk before, well, you find an effective way to deal with it.
Okay, so again, as I've already said in the very beginning, Prime Minister said that they have a clear algorithm on their further actions if any balloons fly into Lithuania's territory. That's like closing the border, shooting down those balloons. Okay, so here's the question then. Do you think that a total border closure would be a solution in this case?
I can explain the logic of the government when the closure of borders is considered and it is in fact employed.
Yeah, please do.
And that is that we have to come up with measures that are also painful for Lukashenko regime and for Belarus well, as a whole, as a reaction to these actions. And that's why the closing of the border points, the two remaining border points, has been employed and cancelled throughout the week, but it did not work. Therefore, the new, more strict measure of just closing it for now indefinitely without no end date, but just to sort of as a sign of that Lithuania is taking the situation very seriously. That's why it has been considered and it has been well decided on. So that is one of the measures. But I think, well, as we have found out, again, I will refer to the previous similar cases, it is important to communicate clearly that this cannot be tolerated and that we will not hesitate in applying in return some equally painful measures against Belarus and against Lukashenko regime. Yes.
Do you think Lithuania is ready to play a long, if I can call it a game, in this game for a long term?
I think it is very important to point out that this can only work as one of several measures, and we cannot, as a NATO eastern flank country, as a country with a 680-kilometer border with Belarus, and as a country that is, well, on the sort of Vilnius is the easternmost, one of the most easternmost NATO capitals. We have to pay more attention to our air defense and airspace security. This is just this is how things work. And while we have been employing quite a lot of measures into making sure that our defense industry develops quicker, meaning that anti-drone capabilities get developed. Well, we are still in the process of doing that. So what I'm trying to say is that, yes, closing the borders is something that is mostly aimed at sending the signal to the Lukashenko regime.
That's right.
The other thing that is equally or even more important is that the country has to be more secure, more safe from any kind of air attack type, and that is, of course, something that we're also working hard on.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, again, next question. So such incidents clearly test not only Lithuania's border security, but also public trust in government and other institutions. So, do you think people feel confident about their government at this specific moment?
Well, I think quite many people who have been personally affected by disruptions of the of flights feel both tired and upset, and that is very understandable because the reactions by the officials, they have been somewhat slow. But well, right now we are in a situation where the country and the people have to somehow come together in well, in the feeling that okay, such things, they cannot disrupt our civilian life or somehow make our trust in our own capacity to counter all sorts of threats.
In other words, we have to stay united.
Yes, we have to stay united, but this, being united has to be united around some solid core and trust that we can deal with such or other types of threats. So right now, of course, what the government needs to do, and the opposition is actually there also to help with that, is talk to the experts, look for best and most effective measures to counter these threats in a, well, what is called kinetic way, sort of practically, and also at the same time to have as much openness and update to the society as possible. So that was perhaps one of the remarks that we in opposition had towards the government, that there was too few communication when already it was clear that it was not just a random smuggler sending a few balloons, but that this was a concerted and focused attack, hybrid attack on Lithuanian.
Systematic attack.
Exactly, and we know that all hybrid attacks, well, their aim is always to destabilize, to try to achieve that people distrust their government, state's capacity to handle the threats. We have been there. We have in the past, we have managed, after some trials and errors, we have managed to deal with such types of threats effectively. And I think, well, we have to believe that we will manage again. And of course, the understanding of the situation and the help, the companionship of our allies is also very important.
Let's come back to our allies briefly. So don't you think that this should be not just Lithuania's response, but NATO as a whole?
Well, of course, I mean, this is the interest of Lithuania is to
protect our
to
sky.
communicate to our allies, to our partners, that this is not just a simple case of smuggling some cigarettes. So that is the thing that our diplomats are right now actively doing. And, well, as we all know, well, NATO is a defensive alliance that works in unanimous agreement, right? We have to see the threats in a similar way, and we have to agree on how to qualify the threats. So this is very important. And, well, I have a strong belief in our diplomatic corps and in the fact that we will manage to explain to our allies...
Explain the message, spread the message.
Yes,
what is it
exactly.
about?
What we are experiencing, that this should be taken seriously, perhaps a new type of threat, a new type of disruption. And of course that both Russia, Putin's actions, not only the war in Ukraine, the war against Ukraine, but also other hostile actions elsewhere, and Lukashenko's regime as an extension of Putin, are continuing to, well, to spread chaos and to try to disrupt our lives. So it's important that, well, there is very consequent, very steady, very determined understanding and view of what these regimes are doing. And of course, then in, well, working together, of course, we can counter these threats, but it's important that we do not, we cannot allow ourselves to be naive or to, you know, to write it away as something that is unimportant or accidental. It is not.
Amen. Amen. Viktorija, thank you for joining us today, and I really hope that we as a whole, as Lithuania as a state, and the society, government, everyone, we will definitely somehow solve this situation.
Of course.
Thank you for joining us today. And I would like to remind our viewers that our guest of today was a Lithuanian MP, Viktorija Čmilytė-Nielsen. You're watching TVP World. Stay with us.